Hello and welcome to this live stream for a Tuesday afternoon. Things have changed a little bit since I first put everything together and planned out this video. Originally, I was thinking that it was just going to be a general conversation about some things that I was interested in and then provide some opportunity for Q&A, give some updates and things like that. But earlier today, I asked the community Discord members if there was anything they wanted me to address in today's stream, and the idea of mentoring came up. And with that, some questions were, is finding a mentor as straightforward as asking, do you want to be my mentor? It can be. Or should you have a few coffee dates first? Depending on the situation, I would recommend it. Um, but also, how does that relationship work? Including what kind of compensation can individuals involved expect or ask for? Making sure that everyone is getting what they need from the situation and making sure that the relationship is good and healthy and so on. And so, to start out today, I want to answer some of that and look at some things to consider when we're looking for a mentor, whatever background that may be, permaculture or otherwise. But I think that if you know a person well, then you can probably just jump right in. Just ask them to be your mentor. But if you don't know them that well, then I would try to meet with them first, get to know them a bit better, and then see if they might be a good fit for you. We can't always guarantee, that everyone is going to work for us. Everybody has different ideas and thoughts about the various pieces of their lives that they might share with you or what their specialty is, and so getting an idea of where they come from can help. And so, in either case, I prefer to be as direct and as clear, though rarely concise, as possible. That we can start by letting someone know that we're looking for someone to be a mentor and that we would be interested in them being that person. And then follow that up with an explanation of what we're looking for from a mentor and what we would like that mentorship relationship to look like, because we can be very much in control of what this experience is as the student. I'm a big fan of the idea that a mentor is more of a guide on the side rather than a sage on the stage. And so, finding someone who fits the role that we're interested in the way that we would like, and that we can kind of learn in parallel with them. Um, but yeah, just having a clear idea of that can really help kind of pull some of these things together. And so some questions that come to mind to develop your thoughts, particularly on what you're looking for in a mentor and what you want the relationship to look like. Ask them, or ask, why do you want that person in particular to be your mentor? Why do they stand out to you as someone of interest or importance? Is it something in particular that they know? Is it their attitude? Is it, they've been doing something for a long time? But what stands out to you about a given individual and why you think they would be a good mentor for you? From there, is there something specific you would like to learn from them? And if so, what is it? Um, Within the permaculture realm, maybe you're looking for a mentor who is really good at design. And so you want to learn design skills from them. Or perhaps there's somebody who deals more with, like permaculture and politics, and that would be what you want to engage them in. Is there something specific that you want to learn? Or is it more that you are looking for someone who can offer you just general advice? Someone who you can call on whenever you need because you are working through something going on in your life. From there, does what you want to learn need to take place in person at an office or a workshop where they're going to teach you something specific and hands-on? Is this skill oriented? And if so, what are the tools and supplies you're going to need? Is that something that you're going to need to bring uh, to them, or is it something that they're going to be able to provide. And again, something to figure out when you're in conversation with them. Is this something where in a mentor relationship that you're going to need to be available that you're going to need them to be available on a regular recurring basis, and that could be something that you need to schedule fairly regularly, maybe weekly, monthly, depending on what you're looking for. Maybe this is somebody who you're having conversations with every day, and what does that look like? If it is something where you're meeting regularly, how often do you meet and for how long? And again, do you need to meet in person and have like a face-to-face meeting where you're showing notes and things that you're working on, or could you get that material to them ahead of time, and then have some kind of a virtual meeting, or maybe a phone call, or it's something that you could explore over email or text messaging, depending on where you're at and what you're looking for. But essentially, when it comes to finding someone to have as a mentor, you want to come to them with a clear description of what you want. Knowing what's being asked of them makes it easier for them to consider the time requirements, to think about whether or not they feel they're going to be the right person, depending on what you're asking for, and then to say yes to your request. And perhaps most importantly, by coming to them with a clear description of what you're looking for, that this is also a time and an opportunity for them to set their own expectations of what the relationship will be like from the beginning. You may be asking more of them than they can provide, but they can meet you in another way. Understanding what your concerns are, they may be able to, guide you through to a path that is more functional for what you're looking for. And yeah, that's where having as clear of an idea of what you're interested in ahead of time while you're talking to a particular person can bring a lot of this together and make it easier for them to make a decision and lay out the way that this will work for them and how they can give you what you need in return. And when it comes to compensation for a mentee, generally that comes from the combination of information, skills, resources, knowledge, and networking that they're going to receive from a mentor. And then the mentor may ask to be paid as part of the relationship, which is not uncommon. Or especially given, because being a mentor can take a lot of time, especially if we want to do it well. It's one of the pieces that for me has been interesting to navigate from my own personal permaculture perspective, is because I like to provide one-on-one experiences with people, very personalized opportunities with individuals, whether they're students, clients, members of the community, people who reach out to me by email to answer a question for them on the show. I'm always looking for a direct personal connection. And even something as simple as answering a couple questions by email can take, an hour or more. And so, I don't think that it's inappropriate for mentors to ask to be compensated for that time. But if they do ask, have a conversation with them, see where you're both at and what feels the most comfortable for you to work through. Of course, mentors may volunteer their time. I know that, like for me, I'll volunteer a half an hour of my time to anybody who reaches out, whether by phone, by email, or however they get in touch or have found me. I will gladly take a half an hour of my time to help them on their journey. And so again, knowing what you want and how long it's going to take can make it easier for someone to decide whether or not they can volunteer the amount of time that you're asking for. And of course, maybe they may wind up somewhere in between where they don't need direct compensation as we might think of it, but instead could ask for a trade of some kind based on your abilities or interests, so that as the mentee you have something that you might be able to trade or give back to your mentor in return. And again, I think that if we have these conversations, are very detailed about it, that the back and forth can lead to a clear understanding of how all of that will work. Though, and of course, this should go without saying, but having encountered this in the permaculture community as well as elsewhere, if a teacher or mentor threatens a mentee or attempts to develop a romantic or sexual relationship with them, run. Just get out of that relationship and get as far away from that person as you can. It's inappropriate given the power dynamic in place, even though we may try to ensure that there is as little hierarchy involved as possible, even trying to speak as much as we can as colleagues or peer to peer. If you've reached out for someone for them to be a mentor, there's other things at play here, and so it's inappropriate for that kind of dynamic to develop. But then, yes, once you get yourself safely away from that situation, once you're in a good place, let other people in the community know, um, so that we're aware of these kinds of problems that are occurring and can help guide people to folks who don't do that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, once you're comfortable with the person who's going to be your mentor, you've got everything set up and a general outline agreed to, and you're planning to move forward. Everybody's said yes. I would initially only commit to a short-term arrangement covering a set number of meetings or months of mentoring. Usually no more than 6 meetings or 3 months of mentoring at any given time. Well, not at any given time, but in order to get started with a relationship like this, after you've gone through that period, then I think that's a good time where um, you've had your initial intake, you've had some conversations, you know how everybody involved works, and so then you can check in with each other, see how you feel about the mentorship and how it's going so far, if there are any adjustments that you need to make, if there are any changes that you as the mentee need, if there's anything that the mentor would like to shift or make different. And then if you can work through all of those ideas and come to a suitable arrangement that suits you both, then you can agree to something longer or dive in deeper for a longer mentor program. And a lot of this also comes from my own experiences as a mentor, as a service that I've offered to the community in different ways over the years. Recently restarted with the show, relaunching this week. New episodes are returning here in the next couple of days, in an interview with Hannah Eckberg about Abundant Earth Foundation. But from doing my own mentoring over the years with folks, I really find that initial short-term arrangement is just really vital for figuring out the long-term health of the arrangement and making sure that everyone involved is well taken care of. Generally for me, from my personal perspective as a mentor, that's, I'm used to taking care of myself, and so we're usually okay. But making sure that the people who I'm working with are getting everything that they need or want from this, and being able to really guide a program towards what it is that the mentee is looking for, and making sure that there's lots and lots of value in our working together. And that's where it is about making sure that you set aside the right amount of time, that it's not just the conversations that you have, but for both individuals in this relationship to come as prepared as they can to every conversation, to everything that they're doing. I'm sitting down with a student tomorrow for my storytelling for personal transformation class. We're having our first mentoring session, and so there are some questions that were raised for me to get a better idea of the stories that they connect with. And so it's super important for me to be kind of versed in those kinds of tales. Or there was a comment that they made to me about a particular sense of self. And so in them having shared that with me and understanding that it's something important to them, doing the research to understand where that idea comes from. If that's something that we're having conversations about, what can I do to deepen my understanding of that so that our conversations are more valuable together? And then just as the same, as a teacher, I have a lot of questions that I like to ask people. And I've got a pool. As with almost everything that I do, I usually have a long list of resources or questions or something related to an idea. And then as I begin working with someone or developing a solution or resource, and pulling from these long lists in order to create something very exacting and specific for a person. And so, yeah, when it comes to um, working in a mentorship relationship or something like that, having good intake questions so that the person who I'm working with can really dig down into themselves and bring everything that they have to the table. Um, Thanks, Felipe. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the new episodes. Coming back into production is feeling really good. I've got this cool project that I'm in touch with some people about for um, a specific podcast series with an amazing permaculture teacher whose work I've loved for many years. Was a new book coming out. We're going to be doing for some fundraising for that here soon. I'm also going to be launching the Summer to Fall fundraiser. Um, with kind of a really big ask this year because I'd like to completely fund a full year of the podcast between this next episode coming out and October, and trying to have everything in place so it's all taken care of to cover 45 episodes of the podcast, at least 25 or at least 24 of these live streams throughout the year, aiming for 2 a month, to cover various topics live and in person, and to cover new material that just doesn't make it to the show in a timely manner, as well as then being out and doing some in-person interviews and starting that starting the short documentary films that I've talked about wanting to create. I've got a couple more pieces of equipment that I'm planning to pick up here over the next few months to round out my kit for that, but to get that working. And yeah, just trying to see if I can fund it all at once from the get-go and be able to plan out the entire year and know that all of the expenses are going to be met, all the needs are going to be met. I don't need to pull in sponsors. I don't need to pull in any additional fundraising drives or anything like that, but just do everything from the beginning, have the plan, and execute, and see what it looks like to produce a full year of the show. Yeah, just kind of completely. So I don't know what that's going to look like. It's going to be probably the biggest fundraiser I've ever done, and I know that I don't always feel the most comfortable with it, but putting it out there and letting people know where we're at and what this is going to look like. Um, yeah, if anybody else is here and you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. I'm gonna look at a couple of books that I want to recommend and have in mind to dive in a bit more deeply. I'll go ahead and switch over to that. But yeah, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to drop them into the chat and we can take it from there. So, and I'll get back to those for some Q&A here at the end. Oh, yeah. If you need any help, Felipe, getting something like the Permaculture podcast off the ground in Portuguese, well, you know, if you would like to get a permaculture related podcast or something off the ground, feel free to drop me a message. It's one of the conversations that I've been having is that it's one of my limitations being monolingual. And I know that more of this needs to happen. And I'm in a place where if I can help more people do this kind of work and launch their own projects and programs, it's what I'm here for. 10 and a half years plus of podcasting experience, all kinds of mistakes made along the way, things that I've learned, equipment that I would recommend, and different ways to do this. So yeah, if it's anything that I can help you with, feel free to drop me an email. show@thepermaculturepodcast.com is still the easiest way to get in touch with me. And yeah, I'll do whatever I can to give you a hand with it. So, but for what's coming out in the permaculture literature right now, one of the books that I have been super excited about and want to discuss in a little bit of detail right now is Chris Salisbury's Wild Nights Out. Once I heard the synopsis for this book as a nature guide that focuses on exploring the night, it was one that I put on my checklist because I just wanted to check it out. And I find that in the end that the results of this book are better than I expected. Chris, who is an outdoor educator, provides really what works out to be a handbook for whether you're a parent or a guardian, grandparent or a teacher, just different ways that you can explore the nocturnal life. And with Chris's teachings, we can add our own to them to get to know more about animals like badgers and bats and the incredible other beasts that roam the night, while also orienting ourselves to the night sky and the myriad of constellations, the handful of planets, the moon, as well as the setting and rising sun that marks those liminal transitions to and from night and help to define that time of our life. And that through what he's written, not only does Chris share a lot of information with us in order to like dive down into um, the night world, but he also provides um, 25 games and activities that we can immerse ourselves in order to expand on the learning experience. So it's not just information, but it is also games and ways to play and to bring all of this back into our lives and continue the learning process. One of the ones that I really liked is he has an activity for mapping the constellations, using chalk and any place that you can draw to kind of put what's in the night sky in a place that we can see it and interact with it and reflect on it in a different way and really have a physical association together. And I think that's really cool because again, the constellations change because of the way that the world changes throughout the year. Just that one simple activity is one that we can repeat each season or each month to see how the sky changes. And whatever we're drawing as, parents or teachers, we can come back and take pictures. And then in taking those pictures, we can compile this information over time. Something else that he includes is to, record the nocturnal soundscape so that we can be out there with recorders, whether those are smartphones or, some kind of other device, make these recordings while we're out there, come back in, and then listen and reflect on them. And again, this is something that we can repeat throughout the years, or throughout the seasons, throughout the year, and year after year, to see how the world around us is changing. I like those kinds of long-term observations or activities that we can engage in over and over again over time. It's something that my children and I did for many years. Was we kept a weather book and had a little weather station, and so would write in there what the temperature was for every given day, how and where the wind was blowing from, and all these other cool things, and got to see those kinds of differences. What days it was wet, what days it was dry. So yeah, any kind of those repeatable activities I think are super important. And one other thing that Chris shares is just the idea of hosting a viewing party on blankets piled up on the ground to take in what we find. We don't need to necessarily be writing and recording all the time. We could be laying there together and sharing in whispers what it is we're hearing, or to point out a particular sound that we're not familiar with, or just to look up at the sky and enjoy it. One of my favorite teenage memories was laying on the boat of a ship miles and miles from shore in the Florida Keys and watching satellites zip by and being able to watch this like regular track across the sky as they would go and return and go and return. And yeah, just really being able to take all of that in. This is, what is it? Almost 30 years later, like 27, 28 years since then, and that's one of those memories that still sticks with me. And that's the importance again for me of engaging in these kinds of activities with children in our lives and being able to build these beautiful memories. And as much as like I love playing video games with my son or my daughter, because she's into that now, Slime Rancher is a big hit in our house. Being able to sit down our devices and walk away from where the power outlets are for a little while. And it doesn't need to be these big, deep, crazy activities in order to have meaningful experiences. So, yeah. It's definitely, yeah. Wild Nights Out is even just thinking through the book and sharing this with you now is touching on a lot of really enjoyable memories for me. Storytelling around campfires with my family, being a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout for many years, and all of those strange activities and nighttime tag and the joke of snipe hunting and all these other pieces. And yeah, I just think that there's so many amazing experiences we can build, memories that we can have together that are the kinds of things that last lifetimes. And so yeah, I think it's a fabulous book, and he closes out with some suggestions and with some suggestions and tips for leading nighttime outdoor adventures and some thoughts on how to make use of our time around a campfire. It's just fabulous. And I hope that the joy in my voice over thinking about this book relays some of that, because I really do think that this is one worth adding to your library if you're teaching children, formally, informally, or anywhere in between. Definitely a fun one to have. Wild Nights Out retails for $19.95, but as I'm producing this live stream, Chelsea Green is having a sale at the moment, so you can pick this up for under $13 from Chelsea Green Publishing at chelseagreen.com. Two other books that I'd like to bring to your attention, which will be released later this year, are Rebugging the Planet and The Healthy Vegetable Gardener. I like Rebugging the Planet by Vicky Hurd because I think it's a nice companion to books like Wild Night Out or Earth Care, People Care, and Fair Share in Education, which I mentioned in the last live stream. Yeah, because it just Rebugging the Planet continues to provide examples and exercises for parents, teachers, and others on what we can do to engage children in the natural world. In this case, with how to bring bugs back to our gardens, schools, parks, and other green spaces, how we can make bug-friendly choices in our clothing, and also in supporting good farming practices that don't just kind of like wipe out everything in an area, and the way that we can, promote those kinds of interests in the world and community around us. And yeah, I think this one's going to be a fun one, and definitely good to check out. The other book for today is The Healthy Vegetable Garden by Sally Morgan, who is the editor of Organic Farming. And in this book, she shares with us a chemical-free approach to gardening that cares for soil, increases biodiversity, and manages while managing pests and disease. Her particular approach accomplishes this through no-dig practices, the judicious application of compost, using cover crops and mulches, while creating a thriving ecosystem that invites in pollinators as well as predators. And if you enjoyed Nigel Palmer's Regenerative Grower's Guide to Garden Amendments, I think you'll like this one too. Rebugging the Planet is going to be out in September on the 16th, 2021, with The Healthy Vegetable Garden landing 2 days earlier on September 14th. And both are currently available for pre-order now at Chelsea Green Publishing, chelseagreen.com. I'll revisit both of these titles in more depth closer to the release date, as the copies I have right now are some uncorrected proofs, so there may be some changes between now and then. From here, of course, be sure to find the podcast on social media. I am on Twitter at PermaculturePod, Instagram Permaculture Podcast. As I also mentioned, if you enjoyed today's live stream or anything else in the archives over the years, feel free to come join the Patreon community at patreon.com/permaculturepodcast. I try to make weekly update posts there. There are monthly AMAs. There's a community Discord you can access from there, and a whole bunch of other things going on. So yeah, feel free to hop over there if you'd like to join us. Of course, if you're here for this, either as it's a live broadcast or you're watching it as a recording, please like the video and subscribe. That all helps grow the YouTube channel for the podcast, and really, works that algorithm here on YouTube. So there are some questions in the chat. Thank you, David and Felipe, for the conversation. Well, I think, David, if you're tuning in, you're at least on the road to being a permaculture practitioner, which, is the best all of us can really do, I think, is our best. So wherever you are on that journey, I'm glad to be here and to be a part of it. Yeah, just really enjoying still being here producing the show after all these years and getting this work done. Still such an amazing thing that I can't believe now that this is the longest running podcast on permaculture in the world, to the best of my knowledge, and it's just fantastic. Um, oh, yes, David. Uh, which reminds me, if you can send me an update on how things are going now that you've landed here in the U.S., I'd love to learn more from the conversation that we had, and if there's anything that I can do to continue to connect you or do anything else like that here in the weeks and months ahead. So then, Felipe, you guys are having your own conversation. Please feel free to continue that. Post any other questions. So, Felipe, your question is, what is the conceptual difference between agroecology and permaculture? Oh, that's a big question. I think ultimately, in the moment, where that leads me is that agroecology is and I only know so much about it, but it is an ecologically beneficial approach to agriculture. And so it's combining the best of what we have from ecology with our farming practices. Whereas permaculture is really a whole systems design framework that uses ethics and principles and then the resulting strategies and techniques to create regenerative human systems and systems that are deeply supportive of human life, and that it's not just about how we gain access to our food, though historically that is where this idea of permaculture comes from, is permanent agriculture, though over time it's grown into something bigger and a bit more, which I'm thankful for, because I think that it provides most of the tools that we need to get the results that we want for a beautiful, abundant earth. And that that permaculture recognizes that we have to be engaging in the political sphere. We have to be engaging in our personal development and our personal perspective, as well as doing a lot of work on the social sphere about community development and things like that, where I think and as I say, I only have a limited approach or a limited understanding of agroecology and how it kind of plays out here in the United States, but largely what I'm seeing of it here is as an approach to agriculture. Not that, permaculture and agroecology are incompatible, but I still find that the umbrella of permaculture is a bit bigger. But with what you just shared about in Brazil, that agroecology is much more known, including in social movements. That's interesting for me. I wonder what the lessons are that are coming out of agroecology that are specific to social movements and why it's landing that way in Brazil. I've been finding that here in the US again, that permaculture is getting much more traction over the last 2 to 3 years than it did earlier. Even like 5 years ago, I don't think permaculture was as well known in the United States as it is now. And the more farmers who I talk to, people who are engaged in like agricultural journalism, the more that I encounter like regional sustainable agriculture organizations and associations, that their members have much more knowledge now than when I started this. Like even having met some folks from the Rodale Institute, which is one of our big, super pro organic groups here in the US, has done a lot to change agriculture, honestly, with the books on composting and other material that they've produced. When I first met some folks from Rodale like 10 years ago, I don't recall permaculture really being on their radar, but it's definitely one of the things that, we're seeing at conferences and everything elsewhere now. So, but as I say, like, my particular perspective on agroecology is kind of limited. There's an agroecology um, magazine that I've wanted to subscribe to, but like with everything else, there's so much. Um, but yeah, I think of, from my exposure of agroecology, as one of those things that falls into the broader techniques that we might get into around here, similar to silvopasture and other things, that it all can comfortably fit under the umbrella of permaculture, if depending on how we want to look at it. But that's also, again, like, my perspective on permaculture is this really big umbrella that all this other really interesting, cool stuff can fit under, because the most important piece for me as a permaculture designer is the design element. Everything else that we want to accomplish is, you know, they all kind of descend from that and become the techniques that we use on the ground. With what you say about access to permaculture in Brazil is related to high income white people with university degrees, yeah, I can understand that. The conversation that I just had with Hannah Eckberg, the piece that will be coming out, well, all goes well, cross our fingers, tomorrow for Patreon and on either Friday or Saturday for general release. It's one of the pieces that we talked about, that permaculture in the Western world is largely still kind of seen as a hobby or a part-time pursuit, whereas for a lot of other folks, it's like, and I don't mean this in a hyperbolic way, but it's life or death. The application of these ideas in order to reform the systems that are in play to create what's needed, for the right level of abundance. But like, even in my own work, it's been one of those hard pieces, is doing everything that I can to make permaculture as accessible as possible, and not locking the individual episodes of the show behind a paywall, going to the community for support, not running a ton of ads about a whole bunch of stuff that people don't need or isn't appropriate to them because of the global size of the audience. That, that's a lot of where the conversations, I think, need to continue to be had. It's better understood these days that permaculture hasn't been accessible for a long time, but could be, that we want it to be accessible, and it can be. But what do we do in order to make that happen? Um, yeah. So, 600-ish episodes in the archives, hundreds and hundreds more planned. Just trying to get anybody with an internet connection to be able to access all this information as easily as they can, and to get a lot of this, in other languages. For all of the places that English is spoken, as one of the results of colonialism and colonization and the way the British Empire spread around the world. I mean, yeah, we can reach a lot of folks, but it's not enough. I'd love to work with somebody who's interested in doing a Mandarin or Cantonese podcast on permaculture, or even if they just be interested in translating some of this material into, regional languages, would be great. But yeah, just the work on that continues, and it's something that I know that people in the community are well aware of, and we continue to do our best to, create those opportunities. So, yeah, I think I've covered everything that I wanted to today. I'm going to take a drink here if anybody has a moment and wants to throw another question or another comment into the chat real quick. And then, from there I'll answer that. If not, then we'll go ahead and draw this to a close. All right, everybody. thank you for joining me today. I'm glad that we were able to do another one of these. Always happy to see all the folks who can show up from around the world. I'm probably going to do another weekly podcast, another weekly live stream next week. I don't know what on. From here, the next live stream is going to be this weekend and continue the conversation about David Holmgren's Principles of Permaculture. This will be part 2. We'll do Principles 4, 5, and 6, but that will be Saturday, July 24th. I'm going to kick off at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, and 6 p.m. GMT, provided I've done all my time zone math right. So I look forward to catching some of you then for that conversation. But from there, all right, everybody, I wish you all a great week. And until we meet again, may you spend each day taking care of Earth, yourself, and each other.